Hi, I'm Narina, and this is how I stopped being the maid of my own story. No, not an actual maid, not the kind that clocks in and gets paid. I was the unpaid, unacknowledged, unofficial housekeeper, therapist, tutor, cook, errand runner, and all around fixer in a house that only called me family when it was convenient. On paper, we looked like the kind of family you'd envy: suburban house in a clean neighborhood, two daughters, married parents, a golden retriever we named Sunny, to look even more put together. But reality was always messier than it seemed, especially for me. The name Lily was spoken like a prayer in our household. My sister, perfect grades, perfect smile, perfect future. At family dinners, her voice was the only one that mattered. Mine? Background noise. Or worse, a disruption. I was folding laundry in the living room when it happened. Again. Lily strutted in, wearing those heels that click like a metronome of superiority. "Hey, you missed a spot on my white shirt," she said, dropping it in my lap without even looking at me. I looked up, my hands still holding one of Dad's golf polos. "You wore it out last night. It had red wine on the sleeve," she scoffed. "I didn't ask for a forensic report, just wash it properly next time." Our mom, breezing by with her coffee, laughed. "Honestly, Narina, sometimes I don't know what we'd do without you. You're practically the maid around here." It wasn't said with affection. It wasn't even said with acknowledgement. It was said like a backhanded compliment dipped in sarcasm. I stood up slowly, folding the shirt and placing it on the couch. "I'm not the maid," I said, almost to myself. Lily turned, clearly amused. "Then stop acting like one." That night, I set the table like I always did. Forks to the left, knives to the right, water glasses polished. Mom was hosting her charity circle friends, and everything had to be perfect. God forbid anyone saw a fingerprint on a plate. As they gathered, Lily leaned over my shoulder and whispered, "Try not to breathe too loudly. You know you make people uncomfortable when you look tired." I flinched. The air knocked out of me with that one sentence. It wasn't new. It was the way she weaponized every little moment. My exhaustion, my silence, my compliance. I served the wine. I cleared the plates. I wasn't in any of the photos they took that night, but I was in every one of them. Somewhere in the background, hands busy, smile neutral, invisible, and essential. Later, I stood at the kitchen sink, scrubbing pans, watching the leftover wine swirl down the drain like something sacred wasted. My father passed by, patted my back like he was clocking out of a shift. "You're a good girl, Narina," he said. "Not like Lily, always wanting things. You're simple. We appreciate that." Simple. That word landed like a rock. Not smart, not ambitious. Simple. I kept scrubbing. The water had long gone cold by the time I looked up and realized I'd been crying. Not the dramatic, loud kind. The slow, aching kind. The kind where tears fall silently because your body's used to holding things in. My room was the attic. Not the cozy, Pinterest-style attic. It was unfinished, barely insulated, and always a little too hot or too cold. But it was mine. The one space in the house they forgot to decorate, forgot to claim, so I filled it with things that mattered to me: books, sketches, clippings of places I wanted to go. I sat at my desk and opened my journal. I'm the maid, but at least maids get paid. I wonder if I just walked away tomorrow. Would they notice before the house collapsed? I didn't want to write anymore. I wanted to scream. But I'd learned screams bounce off these walls and come back louder, angrier. So I stayed quiet. Always quiet. Until the day I wouldn't be. Have you ever felt like your silence was the only thing keeping peace in the room? The attic always smelled like dust and old secrets. I used to pretend it was a castle tower when I was a child, my own little kingdom. But as I grew, the fantasy faded, and all that remained was insulation peeling off the walls and the slow, persistent drip from a crack in the ceiling every time it rained. Still, it was mine. The only place in the house where I wasn't watched, measured, compared. After that dinner party, something inside me changed. Not all at once. It was more like a slow erosion, like the way a coastline reshapes under waves. Quiet, steady, and irreversible. For the first time, I started to really listen to the words they used around me. Not just what they said, but what they chose not to. One morning, I overheard Mom talking on the phone. She didn't realize I was in the laundry room behind the folding screen. "No, we just couldn't afford for both girls to go to college," she said. "Lily's future is investment worthy. Narina, well, she's happy helping around the house. She doesn't need much." She said it like she was talking about a pet, one that didn't need walking. I sat down on the dryer, hands trembling. That wasn't just a slip of the tongue. That was a decision. My life, my potential, had been bartered off as convenience. That same night, I found my old acceptance letter stuffed in a drawer under Dad's warranty manuals. I was supposed to start at a community college last fall. They told me there had been a financial emergency, but Lily got a new car that same week. I took the letter upstairs and pinned it above my desk. Not to mourn what I'd lost, but to remember what they'd stolen. It wasn't just about the school, it was the pattern, the permission they gave each other to diminish me. Lily didn't have a job. She'd say things like, "It's just a phase, Narina. You'll find something you're passionate about. Not everyone's cut out for ambition." And Mom would laugh, adding, "She's too sweet for the real world. That's why she's best here, where we can look after her." That word again. Sweet. The nice way to say powerless. One weekend, we had extended family over. Relatives I hadn't seen in years. People who still remembered me as the shy little girl with tangled hair. Aunt Clara pulled me aside. "So, what are you up to these days, Narina? Studying? Working?" Before I could answer, Mom cut in with a breezy, "She's staying with us for now, such a help around the house, always keeping things together." Clara's smile faltered. She looked at me and said quietly, "That's not staying. That's being used." It was the first time someone had said it out loud. Someone not me. That night, in the attic, I stared at my journal. I didn't write anything. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. Then came the picture. It was an old Polaroid, wedged between pages of an old novel I'd taken from Mom's bookshelf. In it, I was maybe 3, sitting on the steps of a different house, not this one. Beside me was a woman I barely remembered, my grandmother. Behind her, a date written in blue ink, spring '04. That wouldn't be strange, except I wasn't supposed to have lived with my grandmother. That's what I'd always been told. I confronted Mom the next morning at breakfast. "Why was I with Grandma when I was 3? She didn't even flinch. "You were colicky. You cried all the time. Your father and I needed a break." "A break? For how long?" "A few months. It was better that way." Lily smirked into her cereal. "You were the prototype. I was the upgrade." I pushed my chair back, stood. "You didn't send me away because I cried. You sent me away because you didn't want me." Mom sighed, not even meeting my eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Narina. It's not like we abandoned you." But that's exactly what they had done. I went back upstairs, the floor creaking under my steps. The attic door groaned open, and I stood there for a long time, staring at the Polaroid. Maybe the reason this house never felt like home was because it never was. I began to withdraw, slowly, intentionally. They didn't notice. Or maybe they didn't care. I stopped answering Lily's passive-aggressive remarks with words. Just a glance. I stopped waiting for Mom's approval and Dad's non-existent praise. I started going out more, long walks, library trips, small cafes where I could read and breathe. I needed the world to remind me that it existed beyond their expectations. At the library, I found a book on tenant laws and property rights. I wasn't sure why I picked it up at first, but as I read, my brain started clicking into place like a puzzle. Questions emerged. Whose name was the house under? Who actually paid the mortgage? What legal right did I have here? I went home and found the filing cabinet where they kept all the paperwork. It wasn't locked. It should have been. There it was. The deed. The mortgage. Signed in Lily's name. Not Mom, not Dad, just Lily. I felt my stomach drop. I checked the dates. It had been transferred to her 3 months ago, without telling me, without asking me. I'd been vacuuming a house I didn't even live in, a house I had no right to call home. I brought it up at dinner. I couldn't hold it anymore. Why is the house in Lily's name? Silence. Then Mom, without missing a beat. She's responsible. It was time to start building her credit. I turned to Dad. And no one thought to tell me? He shrugged. We didn't think it concerned you, Lily grinned. Besides, you're not exactly financially active. That was the moment. That was the line. The one that burned a hole in everything I still hoped was salvageable. I got up, walked to the filing cabinet, and pulled the papers, dropped them on the table. I cook, I clean, I babysit, I take care of this house, and you transferred it to her like I'm just squatting here? No one answered, because there was nothing they could say that wouldn't make it worse. That night, I didn't cry. I planned. I looked up credit reports, called a lawyer the next day, pretending to be doing research for a story. And I opened a private bank account. I was done being the maid. Sometimes the hardest truth to swallow is realizing your family sees you as furniture. Useful, but never needed. The next morning, I stared at the deed on the table like it was a foreign object. I kept rereading Lily's name printed across the top, bold and permanent. It wasn't a typo. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. They'd planned this. Every dinner I cooked, every errand I ran, every dollar I saved and never spent. It all happened while they quietly rewrote the rules of the house I thought I still belonged to. But this wasn't the kind of betrayal you could scream about. I learned a long time ago that rage in this family only fed the machine. So I stayed quiet. I folded the paper neatly and slipped it back into the envelope like I hadn't seen anything at all. I needed time. Time to think. Time to plan. For the next week, I went through the motions like nothing had changed. I folded Lily's laundry. I drove our youngest cousin to his piano lesson when Mom suddenly remembered she had a hair appointment. I smiled when Dad asked for another cup of coffee and called me his rock. But inside, something dark was blooming. A space that used to be filled with hope and effort was now hollow, and in that hollowness, I started placing bricks. I'd always been the fixer, the one who could smooth things over. Now, I was going to use that same skill to build a way out. One night, while they were asleep, I opened Lily's laptop. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed leverage. She never logged out of anything. She thought no one would ever touch her stuff. And she was half right. Until now. I clicked through her emails. There it was. An entire chain between her and our parents about timing the mortgage transfer and using Narina's income report to justify stability for the bank. They had used my part-time job income. Without telling me, I felt the burn start at the base of my spine. I copied everything, emails, PDFs, scans, sent it all to myself, backed it up in a hidden drive, changed nothing, logged out, shut the laptop. The next day, Lily walked in while I was cleaning the living room. You know, you could at least light a candle in here. It smells like a thrift store. I didn't answer. She paused. You okay? I looked at her, for once really looked. She wasn't nervous. She was curious, like a cat poking at something just to see if it moved. I'm great, I said with a smile so calm it scared even me. Because now I wasn't confused. I wasn't desperate. I was focused. I started documenting everything. Photos of receipts I paid for, text confirmations of chores and appointments. I logged my time. Every hour I spent contributing to a house I no longer legally had a right to, and I began going out more. But not for walks or coffee. I went to real estate open houses. I spoke to a lawyer about hypothetical situations where someone's income was used without consent. He didn't know my name, but I knew his office. That was enough for now. He told me something interesting. If your name's not on the deed, but your finances were used to secure the loan, and there's documentation, That's fraud. I nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. Fraud. Back at home, the cracks were beginning to show. Dad started coming home later than usual. Mom was constantly on the phone, whispering about investments that didn't pan out. Lily's new job was draining her, and her perfectly curated life started to fray at the seams. One night, I overheard her screaming on the phone. I can't afford that. Why didn't you tell me the rates would adjust? This is insane. She slammed her door so hard it shook the hallway. I smiled, just a little. Later, when we were alone in the kitchen, she muttered, Do you know how expensive property tax is? This house is a freaking money pit. I said nothing, just poured her a glass of water and slid it across the table. Thanks, she said. You're still good for something. And that's when I knew. She wasn't just a golden girl. She was a fraud wrapped in glitter. 2 days later, a letter arrived, addressed to me. It was a final notice from the electric company. The account was in my name. I confronted Mom. Her voice didn't even flinch. We thought it'd help your credit history. You never asked. It's not a big deal. You use the electricity too. I held the paper up. This is fraud. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic. It's family. Everything's shared. That's when I decided. No more warnings. No more notes in my journal. I was going to take everything they used against me and flip it. I didn't need to scream. I needed a stage. I used to think that justice came in a flash. Gavel slammed, voices raised, truth exposed in a bright, cathartic explosion. But that's not how it happens in real life. In real life, justice seeps in. Quiet. Cold. Calculated. And no one sees it coming until the ground beneath them shifts, and they realize the floor they stood on never belonged to them at all. That was the truth I woke up to. I started by vanishing from their narrative, not physically, but emotionally. I became agreeable, predictable, forgettable. I answered Lily's jabs with a nod. Sure, I'll get to that. I responded to Mom's micromanaging with a smile. Of course, whatever works best. Dad never noticed. He was too preoccupied with some consulting side hustle he pretended was lucrative. But every night, after they fell asleep, I logged hours. Quietly. Step 1. Isolate my finances. I shut down the old joint savings account Dad had opened for emergencies and opened 3 under different banks. One was a checking account I used for show. Grocery runs, house expenses, small purchases they could track. The other 2 were hidden, and they grew steadily with every paycheck I kept from my tutoring jobs. I found a second remote gig reviewing manuscripts anonymously. Late nights turned into cash. The more I buried in digital folders and burner email logins, the stronger I felt. They didn't know I was rebuilding. That's what made it beautiful. Step 2. Create proof of value. For years, I had no identity outside their definition. No work history, no degree, no credit history that wasn't forged under family responsibilities. So I started from scratch. Volunteering at the library led to a part-time gig organizing community events. I asked for reference letters, testimonials, any trace of my name in positive light. At night, I typed out what looked like blog posts, but they were more than that. They were evidence, timelines, quotes, photos, receipts, emotional context wrapped in storytelling, not to publish, not yet, just to exist. I was finally writing my own name in ink, not pencil. One Saturday morning, Mom handed me a list of things to pick up for a dinner party they decided to throw. Don't forget the wine. Merlot, not Cabernet. Lily's boss is coming, and we need to show class. I held the list for a moment. You know, I'm not of legal age to buy alcohol. She didn't flinch. You look mature enough. Besides, you're not really buying it for yourself. A pause. I'm not doing it, I said, soft but steady. She blinked, like she'd heard the wrong word. What? I'm not your errand girl. Excuse me? I folded the list in half, placed it on the table. You want me there? I'll set the table. I'll smile. But I'm done doing your dirty work. Her lips thinned. We took you in when you couldn't even hold a job. I had one. You just took the checks. She stared at me. What's gotten into you? I met her eyes, level and calm. Nothing. I'm just paying attention now. The party went on without the wine. Lily was irritated, but she was too busy charming her boss to notice the shift in power at the dinner table. I watched them all, laughing, performing, and I realized I'd stopped craving their approval. That was step 3, detachment. But nothing prepared me for what I'd find next. While searching for an old printer cable in the hallway closet, I stumbled on a stack of unopened mail, most of it junk. One envelope, however, caught my eye. It was addressed to Lily, but postmarked from a collections agency. Out of instinct, I took a picture before handing it to her. Her face went pale. I thought I paid that, she muttered. But she hadn't, and I knew it. The letters kept coming. And the best part? The house's equity had already been drawn out. The mortgage was tied up in debt. Her debt. They'd leveraged the house for a lifestyle they couldn't afford. One evening, I caught Dad pacing in the garage, yelling into his phone. I can't co-sign for her anymore. She's already defaulted once. No, I didn't tell my wife. If she finds out, we're screwed. That was the crack I needed. Step 4. Divide and exploit. I planted questions. Quietly, calculatedly. With Lily. I heard Dad mention you had another card open under your name? With Mom. Did you know Dad took out Lily's second car lease under your credit? With Dad. Why is Lily using your name to open more lines? None of it was a lie. Just nudged into the light. Within days, the tension returned. Lily slammed her door more often. Dad drank more. Mom stared at her phone for hours. And I cleaned. I smiled. I filed every voice memo, every receipt, every hint of discord, because I was almost ready. That night, I printed out everything. Emails, bank statements, the timeline of when the deed was transferred, side-by-side screenshots of their messages bragging about managing Narina's credit without her knowing. I placed it all in a folder and titled it, The Cost of Silence. Sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Sunday dinner was always a performance in our house. Polished plates, folded napkins, salad fork on the left, wine glass, though half of us weren't drinking age. A roast in the center like a sacred offering, as if food could patch over cracks we never admitted existed. I chose that moment for a reason. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was predictable. Every week they tried to act normal, and this time I was going to let them. Until they couldn't anymore. Can you pass the gravy, sweetheart? Dad asked, not even looking up. I passed it. Steady hands. Lily was ranting about her coworker stealing credit for a presentation. I swear, she huffed. She wears a blazer, and suddenly everyone thinks she's the CEO. Mom laughed. Maybe you should dress more powerfully. I do, Lily snapped. They laughed harder. It was the kind of scene people post online with how family vibes, the kind strangers envy. But all I saw was decay in a glass house. So I took a deep breath, reached under the table, and placed the folder, The Cost of Silence, on the dinner table between the mashed potatoes and the bottle of wine. 4 sets of eyes froze. What's this? Mom asked, her smile tightening. Read it, I said. Silence. Dad opened the folder, brow furrowing as he skimmed the first page. It was a copy of the deed, Lily's name in bold, circled in red. The second page was the loan application, signed using my income, without consent. Then came the credit reports, the debt, the mortgage schedule, the letter from the lawyer I hadn't hired yet, but had consulted for research. Lily's hand twitched. Where did you get this? I tilted my head. You left it in your inbox. Password was your dog's name. Mom reached across the table. Narina, this isn't something we should talk about here. No, I said, voice calm but iron. This is exactly where we should talk about it. Dad cleared his throat. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I looked at him. Then help me understand. Why is my income on this form? Why is the electric bill under my name? Why did no one tell me this house? This house I clean, maintain, contribute to, was transferred entirely to Lily. Lily looked panicked. You didn't even want to go to college. You never had plans. My voice dropped. Because you used my college fund to pay for your internship in New York. Mom stood abruptly. That's enough. No, I said. That was enough 3 years ago. This is me ending it. She slammed her hand on the table. You're being ungrateful. We fed you, housed you. You used me, I replied. You manipulated every part of my life to benefit yourselves. You turned me into your maid, your excuse, your safety net. And when you didn't need me anymore, you signed the house away and left me in the attic like trash. Dad stood slowly. Let's not say things we can't take back. I'm not taking it back, I said. I'm reclaiming what's mine. I slid the last page across the table. It was a formal statement of withdrawal. I was removing my name from every bill, every liability. I'd also filed a fraud alert and a notice to the utility companies. The next month's mortgage? That's all you now, I said to Lily. Good luck with the adjustable rate. Lily's face turned red. You think this is some kind of revenge? No, I said. This is self-respect. Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize me. You're going to walk away? Just like that? Yes. You'll have nothing. I already had nothing. Now at least it's mine. I walked upstairs, slowly, deliberately. In the attic, I picked up my bag, already packed. I had a job offer in a neighboring city, a small apartment with leaky pipes, but it had a lock on the door and a lease in my name. I took one last look at the space that had been my prison and my sanctuary. Then I walked back downstairs. They were still sitting at the table, folder open like a crime scene. I placed the house keys on the counter. Good luck with the mortgage. Then I walked out. When the house you built isn't yours, maybe the bravest thing is to let it collapse. There was a strange peace in starting over with nothing. Not the romantic kind. Not the movie montage kind. Just quiet. Heavy. Real. The mattress on the floor was too thin, the faucet leaked, and I shared a wall with someone who sang off key at midnight. But it was mine. No one could open my door without knocking. No one could call me downstairs to clean something, to answer for something, to disappear so they could shine. It was day 3 in my new apartment when I realized I didn't know how to relax. Every noise made me tense. Every silence felt like a trap. The trauma didn't disappear when I left the house. It followed me. It sat with me while I ate ramen out of a mug and pretended I liked the echo of the empty room. But I stayed. I breathed. And for the first time, I was no one's reflection. The job was part-time, library assistant and event support, but it paid enough. I walked to work, stocked shelves, helped seniors log into email. Nothing impressive, but everyone called me by name. You're sharp, my manager said one day. You should apply for the assistant coordinator position. I smiled, uncertain. I don't have a degree. She shrugged. I have a degree in sociology, and I shelve books. You have experience. That counts more. That night, I updated my resume. Back at the house I'd left, the silence wasn't so peaceful. I hadn't blocked them. Not entirely. I wanted to know how it unraveled. The first message came from Dad. Just a line. You made your point. When are you coming home? I didn't respond. Then Lily. The mortgage was due today. You said you'd handle utilities? I sent back a copy of the termination letters. A week later. Mom wants to talk. She's sick about what happened. I replied. She's sick because she lost control, not because she's sorry. And then, nothing. Until Aunt Clara called. She was the only one who'd ever looked at me like I was more than furniture. She didn't ask why I left. She asked if I was okay. They're scrambling, she said softly. Your mother called asking to borrow money. Your dad's business deal fell through. Lily might lose the house. I didn't ask for details. I didn't gloat. I just said, "Thank you for telling me." And for a second, I felt guilt, not for leaving, but for how easily I adapted once I did. At the library, I met Micah. He was a volunteer, tall, awkward, always wearing a band shirt under his cardigan. "You like poetry," he said, nodding toward the book I was shelving. I glanced down. It was Mary Oliver. "She doesn't write poems," I replied. "She writes maps." He smiled. "That's why I like her. I'm terrible with directions." We talked every Tuesday. He never asked too much, never dug too deep, just talked like I mattered. It was terrifying. One day, I told him a little. "Ever feel like you were born in a house where everyone was acting? Like you were the only one who couldn't read the script?" He didn't hesitate. I was the unwanted understudy, expected to know the lines, never given the part. We sat in silence for a while. That's when I realized. This was healing. Not loud, not dramatic. Just sitting with someone who didn't need to fix you to see you. 2 months passed. Then came the email. From Mom. Subject line. Urgent. "The bank is threatening foreclosure. We're behind. Lily maxed out 2 credit cards. Your father won't talk to me. I don't know what to do." No apology, no responsibility, just a plea. I stared at it for 20 minutes. Then I replied, "There's no one left to blame. That's what you do now." I got promoted the next week. Assistant program coordinator. My first purchase? A real bed. With a frame. No more mattress on the floor. I lay on it that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the nights I spent in the attic, wondering if I was too broken to ever leave. Turns out, I wasn't broken. I was buried. Have you ever walked away from something that once defined you, only to realize it never did? I never planned to tell the story. Not publicly. Not even to friends. It felt too tangled. Too loaded. Like if I said it out loud, I'd somehow lose the clarity I'd finally fought to gain. But trauma doesn't vanish. It lingers in muscles, in the way you flinch when someone raises their voice, in how you apologize before speaking. One night, after a full day at the library and dinner with Micah, who was now more than just Tuesdays, I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor. And I wrote. Not as revenge, not even for closure. I wrote because if I didn't, it would stay inside me. And I was tired of housing pain that wasn't mine to carry. The blog was anonymous, a simple title, The Maid's Daughter. I didn't name names, I didn't rant. I just told the truth. What it felt like to be invisible in your own home. How betrayal sometimes wore pearls and smiled from across the table. Why leaving wasn't the hardest part. Surviving what they made you believe about yourself was. By the end of the week, the post had 3,000 shares. By the end of the month, 50,000. Comments poured in. I thought it was just me. You described my mother perfectly. I cried reading this. Thank you. A woman named Ellie messaged me privately. I'm sitting in my car outside the house I'm about to walk away from. Reading your post gave me the strength to turn the key and not look back. That broke me. And then it healed something too. One afternoon, I was shelving returns when my boss walked up. You've got mail, she said, waving a letter. Real paper mail. Haven't seen one of these in years. It was from a small independent publisher. They'd found the blog. They wanted to talk. At the coffee shop downtown, I met Rachel, a senior editor who looked exactly how I imagine people who never missed a therapy session might look. I think your voice is important, she said. It's not angry. It's reflective. That matters. I'm not sure I'm ready to be known, I admitted. She sipped her tea. Then maybe write it for the version of you that needed to be seen 5 years ago. That night I signed the contract. Not for fame, not even for money, for freedom. But the past has a way of finding cracks. I was at the farmer's market with Micah when I saw Lily. She was thinner, sharper. Not in a glamorous way, more like a wire stretched too tight. She didn't see me at first. She was arguing with a vendor over the price of tomatoes. Micah followed my gaze. Friend of yours? Something like that, I said quietly. She turned. Our eyes locked. For a second, I thought she'd look away. She didn't. She walked over. Narina! It was the first time she'd said my name without contempt. Lily! She hesitated. You look good. So do you. She laughed, bitter. You don't have to lie. Silence. I read the blog, she added. I stiffened. You weren't supposed to know it was me. She shrugged. It wasn't hard to figure out. I nodded slowly. So what do you want? To say, I didn't know. Yes, you did, I said, steady. You just didn't care. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm sorry, not just for what we did, for not seeing you, for making it worse. I wanted to believe her, but healing taught me boundaries. I appreciate that, I said, but this is as close as I'm willing to come back. She nodded. I get it. As she walked away, Micah took my hand. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just weird seeing the ghost of who I used to clean up after. Weeks passed. The manuscript took shape. Part memoir, part guide, part love letter to the person I was becoming. Micah and I moved in together. Not because I needed saving, but because we both knew what it meant to choose someone freely, not out of survival. One night, I got a call from a familiar number. It was my brother. We hadn't spoken in years. He was younger, quiet, always hiding behind books and headphones. I left, he said. I sat up. Left what? Home. I couldn't stay there, not after everything. My voice cracked. Where are you? Outside. I opened the door, and there he was. Older, tired, real. He hugged me like he'd been waiting years. Sometimes your story saves someone else, and that's how you learn to thank yourself. I kept it in a drawer, folded neatly between the pages of a journal I no longer wrote in. The letter. I never meant to send it. I wrote it because I needed to hold the past in my hands one last time before I let it go. Dear Mom, dear Dad, dear Lily, there are 100 things I could write here. Facts, accusations, even forgiveness. But I won't waste paper on blame. This isn't about what you did. It's about what I finally chose. I chose silence so I could hear my own voice. I chose distance so I could learn what closeness is. I chose to leave not to punish you, but to protect me. You taught me how to carry weight that was never mine. And now I've set it down. I hope someday, if you look back, you won't see me as the maid or the afterthought. You'll see a girl who finally became her own home. But if not, that's okay too. I no longer need to be understood to be free. Narina. I read it once, exhaled, and placed it back in the drawer. There was no rage left. No ache. Just peace. I no longer lived in reaction to them. I lived in response to me. The book launched under the same name as the blog, The Maid's Daughter. It wasn't a bestseller. It didn't land me on TV. But it found its people. One night, after a signing event, a woman waited until the line cleared. She didn't speak at first, just held the book to her chest and said, "Your story let me leave." That was the award. Micah and I planted a fig tree in our tiny shared backyard. It was small, barely a sapling, but we dug the hole together, dirt under our nails, laughter in the wind. You know it won't bear fruit for years, he said. I know, I replied, but roots come first. My brother stayed with us for a while, quietly healing. Some nights we sat on the porch and said nothing, and it was enough. One day, he handed me a letter of his own. I never asked what was in it. He said he mailed it. I said I was proud of him. We never mentioned the attic, but sometimes we'd both look up when rain tapped the roof, and we'd smile, knowing we weren't there anymore. I returned once. To the house. It was empty, foreclosed. The lawn overgrown, windows dusty. I stood on the porch, holding a small envelope. I slid it under the door. Inside, a copy of my book. No note, no signature, just a closed loop. Now, on the other side of everything, I don't hate them. I don't need to. Some legacies are not worth repeating. Some cycles, once broken, are meant to stay that way. If you could write a letter you'll never send, what would you finally say? Sometimes, walking away isn't about giving up. It's about finally choosing yourself. If you've ever felt like the quiet one, the forgotten one holding it all together while losing yourself in the process, know this: your story matters. Your voice matters. And the moment you decide to live for you, not for their approval, everything begins to change. What would you say in a letter you'll never send? Would it bring peace or help you close a door for good? If this story touched something deep in you, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And hey, if you didn't connect with this one, I'd love to hear why too. Your voice is welcome here. If you found this video meaningful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story that might just speak to your heart.